more questions raised about this case, even as the former maid of the Changi Airport Group chairman is acquitted of theft charges.
Bigger exhibitions and conferences set to return. Organisers can apply to pilot such events from next month.
So unintended, so wrong, Novak Djokovic hits a line judge by mistake that gets him kicked out of the US Open.
Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
And I'm Haryanto Dimana. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Now, if you remember, one of the earliest clusters of COVID-19 in Singapore was at a business conference at the Grand Hyatt Hotel. Now, months later, the authorities are looking at gradually and safely opening the doors to these long-sealed conference rooms and centres.
Short for meetings, incentives, conventions and exhibitions, the MICE industry is a vital piece in our tourism sector, and authorities are pulling out the stops to ensure its safe return. Multimedia journalist Liew Mun Leong has more.
More people could start filling up event spaces like the one at Marina Bay Sands soon, as bigger exhibitions and conferences with up to 250 physical participants return to Singapore. From October 1st, organisers will be able to apply to pilot such MICE events.
We aim to lead the way as a trusted, safe and innovative destination for MICE events. So while the recovery is long and uncertain, we are confident that if we put in place all these building blocks, we will get there. Because once we have the building blocks of 250s, we will actually be able to scale this to many times more. So this will continue to be an important industry for us because it will support more than 34,000 direct and indirect jobs with a value add of about 3.8 billion or about 0.8% of our Singapore's GDP.
The increase in the maximum number of attendees to 250 from 50 currently comes after a successful pilot in August for an event with up to 50 delegates. Mr. Chan also said that trialling these events is intended to open the doors to holding ones at an even larger scale for both a local and foreign audience.
We are in conversations with many countries, some of them at the regional level, some of them at the individual country level, to see how we can have the reciprocal arrangements with them to mutually recognize each other's test protocols so that we have the mutual assurance of each other's test standards.
Despite being hit hard, the MICE industry, alongside help from the government, is keeping its lights on. Many industry players are still hiring, both to fill spaces left by foreign employees who have since left, as well as upskilling for roles that are expected to emerge as the borders reopen.
28,000 training places were filled, and many of these will eventually enable the workers involved to work more effectively and to help their businesses to be more successful in whatever it is that they do. So between April to July, more than 900 individuals found jobs or took on new roles in tourism through WSG's program. Now looking forward, what's still available? Quite interestingly, since April, we see that there have been more than 2,400 jobs, traineeships, company attachment and training opportunities that have been made available, and there are more than 220 companies in the tourism sector that are hiring.
For now, though, the authorities are trialling a new prototype for larger events such as a trade show, but with modifications to ensure that they run safely. It will be tested at several shows, starting with Travel Revive, a new trade show launching in November. Liew Mun Leong for the Straits Times.
Bigger MICE events, now that sounds like good news. Let's talk about this with Group Managing Director of Conference and Exhibition Management Services, Mr. Edward Liew. Hi, Mr. Liew, welcome to the show. Now, Mr. Liew, it's been exactly 5 months since the circuit breaker kicked in, and we're finally seeing the return of bigger exhibitions and conferences. How much of a boost does it spell for the MICE industry?
Well, this is definitely a very welcome news for the MICE industry here in Singapore. As you know, really with the onset of the pandemic earlier this year, the entire industry has been very hard hit, and to a large extent, most of us have been out of business. So therefore, to allow us now to slowly but surely get back into the business is a most welcome move. And we look forward to being able to be allowed to organize our events going forward in the months to come.
Right. Well, having said that, do you think that, Mr. Liew, that event organizers would actually need this cap of 250 attendees? Because we are thinking that, although most, if not all events and meetings have moved online and people might be used to meeting virtually anyway, and there's also a concern about safety, especially with, large-scale gatherings like MICE events. So do you think, once again, that event organizers would need this cap of 250 people?
Well, I think this cap of 250 people, as I said, it's a good number to start with, so that, the entire exhibition and conferences could be well managed with the safe management measures. But on the other hand, we really would need more visitors, more exhibitors to take part in our MICE industry, because our industry has already been hard hit, as I said, and therefore we really need to have more exhibitors to come back to participate in our event to make the industry viable. So therefore, yes, in fact, we would love to have a larger number if possible, but we understand why the government is taking measured steps to help us get back into the business, slowly but certainly.
Right. Mr. Liew, by increasing the number of physical attendees fivefold from the current 50 to 250, stringent safe management measures must be carried out. What are some of the challenges you foresee?
To organize a trade show, to be honest, takes more than 3 months or 6 months. It takes a long time to organize a good trade show that will be able to serve the interests of the trade businesses and buyers. So therefore, the big challenge ahead of us is to invite and allow our foreign exhibitors to come back into Singapore and to partake in the physical trade show. So this will depend almost entirely on the state of affairs of the coronavirus. So it is not just Singapore alone, but it is a global issue. If Singapore is well controlled at the moment and we are able to open up with more green lanes and fast lanes for more foreigners, foreign exhibitors and companies to come into the Singapore, then yes, the faster we will be able to get back into our normal strides and open up the exhibition and the economy even more.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Liew, for setting aside time. Now, we wish you and, of course, your colleagues in the industry all the best. We were speaking to Mr. Edward Liew, Group Managing Director of Conference and Exhibition Management Services.
An update on the COVID-19 situation here. 22 new cases were confirmed today, taking the total count in Singapore to 57,044. Now, this is the lowest daily figure in more than 5 months since March 16th, when there were 17 cases. Today's cases includes one community case who's a work pass holder, and there were also 3 imported cases. The Health Ministry will share more details tonight.
In other local news, new price transparency guidelines to stamp out fake discounts and hidden add-on fees in advertisements are set to be implemented on November 1st, and they will apply to all physical and online supplies. The guidelines are to stamp out errant practices and spell out actions that businesses should take to ensure they are not infringing the law, and cover 4 areas: drip pricing, misleading price comparison, false discounts, and a misuse of the term free.
According to a survey by the Manpower Ministry, some workers who were retrenched in the first quarter of this year were able to find jobs and did not experience sizable pay cuts. MOM found that 39% of workers surveyed found new jobs by June this year, and 60% of them did not take a pay cut of more than 5%, and about half switched to a different industry. This despite weaker hiring sentiments brought on by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy.
Now, both the Manpower Ministry and the police, Olivia, are looking into the case of Miss Party Liani, now the former domestic worker who was acquitted of stealing from Changi Airport Group chairman Liew Mun Leong and his family. MOM said that in its consultation with the Attorney General's chambers as to whether any further action ought to be taken following comments by the judge, Justice Chan Seng Onn.
That's right. Well, the AGC had said that it would be studying Justice Chan's judgment. Meanwhile, the police also said that they would be looking into several observations of police investigations made by Justice Chan. Now the case is garnering some attention indeed. So let's bring in law correspondent at the Straits Times, Selina Lam. Now, Selina, what were the most startling points of this case for you?
Hello. I think one of the most startling things was that there was a 5-week delay between the time that the Liew family called the police and the time that the police actually came to the crime scene to take photos of the items that were allegedly stolen. So the report was actually made on the 30th of October, and it was only 5 weeks later that the police came down on the 3rd of December to the house to take photos of the items. And plus the fact that during this 5-week period, the family members were actually, taking items from the boxes, and there was an intermingling of items. So the judge basically said that, there's a break in the chain of custody of the evidence, and plus the delay, right? So which means that the photographs that were taken doesn't accurately represent the items that were found in the boxes 5 weeks earlier. The other one was the High Court judge. In particularly, he highlighted that Mr. Carl Liew was dishonest and was not a credible witness. And he actually said that, the district judge was wrong to have found that he was credible during the trial in the state courts. This is particularly because the maid was actually accused of stealing a large number of items from Mr. Liew. But even during the trial, the district judge found that she had doubts over whether some of the items actually belonged to Mr. Liew as he had claimed. This included women's clothing, which were smaller sized, and during the trial, Mr. Liew actually claimed that he wore women's t-shirts sometimes. So the district judge actually disbelieved him and removed these items from the charge. So the High Court judge said that the district judge should not have gone on to find that he was a credible witness in the light of his dishonesty over those particular items.
You were in court last Friday when Miss Party was cleared of the 4 theft charges. Could you describe her reaction and the mood in the courtroom?
She was very emotional after she was acquitted, and there were about 10 people in the public gallery at the time, people from the Indonesian embassy, and then people from home where she had been staying at the shelter. And after she was acquitted, they hugged each other and they cried, and they were very emotional after that. Yeah, and some of the people from home who have been with her for a long time, they also got very emotional, and they also broke down and cried. She also hugged Mr. Anil Balachani.
Selina, Miss Party has been staying in a migrant workers' shelter since 2016, from around the time the original police report was made on October 30th, 2016. So it's been a 4-year ordeal for Miss Party. What damages then is her legal team seeking?
Right. Her lawyer has actually said that they will be seeking compensation. First, they'll be trying to contact the Liew family for compensation, and we are not privy to the exact amount that they're seeking. But what they have said so far is that they are seeking compensation for the salary because she has not been able to work these 4 years. So what they have been able to reveal to us is that primarily they are looking at the compensation for the salary that for all these 4 years that she was earning about $600 a month. The second option is that under the Criminal Procedure Code, there is a provision which allows a person who has been acquitted to seek compensation against the state for vexatious prosecution. And I think under the law, there's a maximum of $10,000. But of course, it is an uphill task for somebody to prove that prosecution was frivolous or vexatious. Yeah, but this is the second option that her lawyer has mentioned.
Now, Ms. Party's been acquitted, but does it end here, Selina? What's next for her, as well as the agencies whose protocols have been called into question?
So I think for her, she still faces an outstanding charge for fraudulent possession of property. And of course, now it depends on whether the prosecution still wants to go ahead for a trial on this charge, or whether it wants to withdraw the charge against her. So until this charge is settled, she can't really leave Singapore. And as for the police investigations, well, I think the police have already said that they are looking into it. So I guess they will have to look at whether how this case was investigated actually breached any form of, SOP or guidelines or whatever.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Selina. Thanks so much for taking the time. That was law correspondent Selina Lam, and you can read all about this case over at straitstimes.com.
Now let's take a look at the global headlines. India has overtaken Brazil as the second most affected country by COVID-19 infections, adding more than 90,000 new cases today. It now has 4.2 million confirmed cases, behind the US, which has 6.4 million cases. The rise comes as the government continues to lift restrictions to try to reopen India's economy.
Travellers entering Malaysia from Singapore under the periodic commuting arrangement will no longer be allowed to quarantine at home, but would be sent to quarantine centres instead. This after a Malaysian who crossed the causeway under the scheme tested positive for COVID-19. More than 3,000 people have entered Malaysia using the PCA since it was introduced on August 17th.
Australia expects to receive its first batches of a potential COVID-19 vaccine in January as the number of new daily infections fell to a 10-week low. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said today his government has struck a deal with biotech firm CSL to manufacture 2 vaccines, one developed by rival AstraZeneca and Oxford University, and another developed in CSL's own labs with the University of Queensland. CSL is expected to deliver 3.8 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in January and February next year. Mr. Morrison added that should both vaccines pass clinical trials, Australia will spend 1.7 billion Australian dollars for a total of nearly 85 million doses.
Drama in the sporting world. Top seed Novak Djokovic was disqualified from the US Open for accidentally hitting a ball at a line judge in his 4th round match against Pablo Carreno Busta. He had shown his frustration after losing serve, taking a ball out of his pocket and hitting behind him and striking the female line judge in her throat. Well, after a lengthy discussion, he was defaulted by tournament officials. Djokovic apologized in an Instagram post, saying, "I'm extremely sorry to have caused her such stress. So unintended, so wrong."
Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly secured victory at the Italian Grand Prix to claim his first ever win in Formula One. A rare error from Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes during a safety car deployment opened the door for the young French driver who had been demoted from Red Bull to its feeder team last season due to poor performances. The win for the AlphaTauri car ended a run of 146 straight races that had been won by either Mercedes, Red Bull or Ferrari.
Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, do visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Koy. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.